Well, today we're going to talk about my friend Bob. Bob grew up in London, Ontario. He called London, Ontario home. After the war, he came back to London, Ontario. That's how much he enjoyed London, Ontario. Well, for today's video, we're doing a video for Remembrance Day. You know, just one day out of the year for Remembrance Days to me is not enough. You know, I think about the stories my old friend told me. You know, he was from London, Ontario. He lived on the East End growing up. When he came back from the war, he came back to his mom and pa's house and then moved to the west side of London on the same street, but just to the west end of London. He got himself an apartment. That's where he lived. So yeah, he just grew up in London, Ontario. He called it home. He liked London. He went overseas, seen different parts, and he said there's no place like home. So, you know, in my story, he'd stop by once in a while and he'd say, you know, I'm reporting to duty. Just say, hey, do you need anything? So growing up, he had two brothers, which were both older. He had a sister. The sister stayed in London, Ontario, and was making stuff for the war in a factory in London, Ontario as well. But he was the youngest, and he wanted to go help, so he lied about his age, and he managed to wiggle his way in and got himself in the army. So yeah, he's just a little bit too young to join the army, but you know, it's pretty cool. He enjoyed running the tanks. He was in the tanks division, and that's what he really liked. He always talked about which ones were better, which ones weren't so popular, but I do believe the ones that he favored the most was the Chryslers. He said he could just whip them around and they never stall out. But he said the don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure is the GMs. He said if you did some quick maneuvers like donuts or spin it around, and they'd conk out. So you had to be really careful on what you did with them. And he really liked the Chryslers. He said any mission he went on, he always trusted that Chrysler to get him back. And yeah, so it's quite a thing, you know. He had one brother that was a tail gunner, and his other brother started out working the fields. I guess in today's terms you might call it a candy striper, but he started the very basic helping out with medical, and then when he left the war he was a doctor, I do believe. And then I think afterwards, after the war, he became a lawyer. So it's pretty interesting history. As of 2011, his brother that stayed in England, he was still alive, because I know he was talking about him. He says once a year they'd call and chat, and that'd be about all they ever talked. But I know I asked him about if he ever thought about going back, and he says he has, but he's just never felt like he wanted or the need to go back. But he says there's a lot of memories over there, and but he says I enjoy home, and home as being in London, Ontario. So it's pretty neat to say, and awesome to say, that his two brothers, they survived the war, and they survived. You know, he says not many people can say that. But he was proud to serve, and he was really proud that him and his other two brothers survived the war. But you know, he talked about a lot of stories about the war. And I know after all the stories he told me, maybe 3-4 years later, I know it's just a movie, but the movie Fury, I almost thought it was like him telling the story. I thought that was pretty cool when I watched it in the theaters. So it just, you know, it felt like he was narrating it. But yeah, Bob lied about his age, and Bob came back. He was proud to serve. He said he'd do it again. You know, he doesn't have much family. He's only got a niece and a nephew. But his last name was Parsons. And anyways, he always had a good joke every time you seen him. And you know, he says, "My last name is Parsons, just like the preacher." And then, but he'd say, "But far from a preacher, I am." He always liked to have his beer. And the last few years he was alive, he decided he wanted himself a electric e-bike. He bought one, and he attempted to run it around the trailer park where he'd reside in the summer months. But it was pretty funny. You know, at that age, to be that bold. And well, he did it. Got himself an electric bike. He did wipe out once, but you know, but power to him, you know, for trying that at that age. So anyways, he had it for a bit longer and then decided to let it go. But yeah, just there's my video, and just talking about Remembrance Day. A day is not really enough. I always think about the stories that he's told. And there's another tidbit of a story. And the story is, there was a family from Glencoe, and I believe the guy's last name was Lilly. He was a big farm guy, and they were in a tank, and it got severely damaged. But anyways, he was severely hurt. But because of him getting the tank open to get everyone out of the tank, that was caused his passing, because he used all the strength to get the tank open and then let everybody out. But I know that was told to me from a fella from Elsa Craig, an old timer. He was telling me a story a few years back about that Lily from Glencoe, Ontario. But anyways, I just think it's kind of neat, you know, some of these stories. I think they should get out more often. You know, these people were, you know, put their life on the lines, and you know, they could never get enough thanks. But anyways, there's my story about Bob Parsons from London, Ontario. Thanks everybody for watching. Cheers.